All right, so get ready because we're diving into a question that's kind of been brewing for well, forever, right? Can you really have true freedom in pure chaos? Or does real freedom actually need some kind of structure, some order to even
And
exist?
that's exactly what makes this Hades versus Satan story you've given us so fascinating.
It really is.
Hades versus Satan. Who really controls the underworld? Just the title alone. You know you're in for a wild ride.
You know it. But it's not just some supernatural showdown.
Yeah.
It really digs into how we see life and death and every single choice we make in between.
It really makes you question those traditional ideas of good versus evil.
For sure.
Because when you think about it, maybe it all boils down to control versus choice. And what's so striking is how the author just throws you right into that conflict.
Yeah.
Right from the first part, the prelude to darkness. You've got Hades. He's all about order, right? Yeah. The pragmatic ruler. Then, bam, Satan shows up.
Talk about a clash of styles.
Right. Satan's this force of chaotic freedom, and suddenly you can practically feel the underworld itself freaking out.
Oh, absolutely. And what really grabbed me was it doesn't just stop at this power struggle.
Yeah.
Parts 2 and 3, a clash of philosophies, and the tension builds. They lay out these totally opposite views on what the afterlife should actually be.
It's a pretty clever way to get us thinking, too, don't you think?
Totally.
I mean, the author takes this familiar setting, the underworld, and suddenly it's a metaphor for how we see life and death,
Yeah.
Like, what's it all about? Is it about accepting your fate, finding meaning in the order you're given? Or is it about fighting for your own path, even if it means chaos? I don't know.
And you've got Hades with this whole balance and duty thing. He practically sees himself as a shepherd guiding these souls, right?
Exactly. And that's where the author does something really interesting. And they start to give the dead a voice.
Yes.
They've been stuck in this quiet order for so long that Satan's whole free will, even if it means chaos thing, well, it's got to sound pretty tempting, right?
Right.
Like, he's basically offering them a chance to break free from everything, not just Hades, but the very rules that define their existence in the afterlife.
Right.
And that's when things get really interesting, at least for me, because all of a
Right.
sudden, this philosophical debate, it explodes into action.
And you can feel it, too, in parts 4 and 5. The rift expands and the battle of ideals. That growing tension between Hades and Satan is like the author portrays it as an actual physical split in the underworld.
Oh, it's brilliant.
I know.
That rift becomes this powerful symbol.
Totally.
It's not just about them. It's like the internal conflicts we all deal with.
Yeah.
That pull between wanting safety, wanting what you know, but also craving something more. Even if it throws everything into chaos, makes you think, what would you choose if you were in their shoes?
Right. And as if the dead didn't have enough to deal with, the stakes get even higher.
Oh, tell me about it.
In parts 6 and 7, the confrontation intensifies and the choice of the dead. We're talking full-on temptation here. Satan is not holding back.
Right.
He dangles this idea of power in front of them, of defying their predetermined fate. It's almost seductive. This promise of feeling truly alive again.
And that's the question, isn't it? What does it even mean to be alive, especially in the afterlife? Is it about following the rules? Or making your own choices, even if they lead to chaos? And, the author doesn't just talk about the consequences of those choices. They show us.
Oh, yeah.
It's right there in part 8, the first to fall. This soul, the very first one to give in to Satan's promises.
Yeah.
The author describes this total transformation.
It's intense.
It is. This soul is probably all, I don't know, faint, just kind of there in the background before. And then bam, it's like this explosion of fire, completely different. You're like, is that even the same being?
It makes you think twice about the kind of freedom Satan's offering, right? Like, is this really what it's all about? This power that just consumes everything you were. It's not just breaking free from rules at that point. It's, I don't know, a whole different level.
Exactly. And that's where part 9, the fracturing of the underworld, it takes on this whole other meaning. We're not just talking about some physical split in the underworld anymore. It's like a mirror, reflecting the broken pieces inside us when we're wrestling with these huge life-altering choices. Or I guess afterlife-altering in this case.
It makes you see Hades in a different light, too. I mean, he can't be happy about his whole realm splitting apart like this, right?
No way.
But there's this, I don't know if it's sadness or acceptance in how the author writes him. Like, he's not chaining anyone down, forcing them to stay.
It goes back to that idea of Hades as more than just this stern, unfeeling ruler, The author gives us these little glimpses into what he's thinking. The loneliness, the weight of responsibility. It's like he's not clinging to order just because. Like he's trying to protect them.
Protect the souls from themselves.
Yeah. Like he's seen what happens when you choose the chaos route, and maybe it's not always pretty.
Do you think there's regret there too?
Oh, 100%.
Like he sees these souls choosing chaos, and there's a part of him that's hurting for them because he knows it might not end well.
That's the thing about this story, right? It doesn't shy away from emotions, even in the middle of this epic battle. And it's not just Hades. In part 10, the eternal standoff, you start to see the cracks in Satan's armor too.
Yeah. I was just thinking that. It's like he's been this unstoppable force all about the rebellion, but now we're seeing the aftermath. What happens after you smash everything?
Right. He wanted to shake things up. He wanted to offer freedom.
Yeah.
But at what cost? And that's where reflections on darkness and order, this whole section on Hades and Satan's inner thoughts, it just changes the game.
It totally does. It's like you think you're reading this epic battle story, but then boom, it goes deep. We're talking real, raw emotions here from these like larger-than-life figures.
It's kind of unexpected, but it works.
It totally does.
Because suddenly we're seeing these guys, Hades and Satan, and they're not just these symbols anymore. They're beings with flaws, with histories, with regret. I mean, take Hades. We always see him as this cold, unfeeling guy, right?
Yeah.
But here, the author shows us this whole other side of him.
You're right. He's almost burdened.
Yeah. Like he feels the weight of every single choice, every single soul he's responsible for. And then there's this part, oh, it gets me every time, where he talks about feeling this longing. Like he wishes he could connect with them, these souls, but there's this barrier.
It's heartbreaking. And Satan, wow. The author doesn't let him off easy either. We get these glimpses of his past, and it's like, not regret exactly, but
more like a sense of loss. Like he traded something precious for this freedom he's battling.
Yes, exactly. And it makes you question everything.
It does.
Is this really the freedom he was looking for? Or is there a part of him, even a tiny part, that misses what he left behind?
And that's the thing about this whole story. It makes you realize that even these powerful figures, these supposed embodiments of order and chaos, they're not so different from us.
Not at all.
They grapple with the same big questions, make choices with lasting consequences, and ultimately, they're looking for some kind of meaning, just like the rest of us.
And then that last section, the eternal dance of conflict. It's almost like the author saves the most profound stuff for last.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. We go from this epic showdown to something way more introspective. It's like, what is the point of it all, you know?
What happens when the dust settles. And to really dig into that, we got to move on to the final part of your deep dive.
Okay, so we're back. And you know that feeling when you get to the end of a story, but it doesn't really feel over.
Oh, absolutely. Like you're left with more questions than answers.
Yes. And that's exactly what happened with Hades versus Satan, right? That last part, the eternal dance of conflict, it just stayed with me. Like we don't get a neat little bow tying everything up. Instead, the underworld is forever changed, and it's caught between these two powerful forces. And it got me thinking, isn't that kind of like life itself?
It is. That's what makes this section so powerful.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just a power struggle anymore. It's deeper. It's like the author is holding up a mirror to our own internal battles.
Right, because we have that split too. Part of us craves order, craves rules, and then there's that other part that wants to break free, even if it means chaos.
And the author doesn't shy away from that, do they? The underworld, all fractured between those who chose order and those seduced by chaos. Man, it's a powerful image.
It really is. It's like the author is saying this battle between order and chaos. It's not a one-time thing. It's not about winning or losing. It's this constant push and pull inside of us and all around us.
It's like a dance, you know? And just like those souls in the underworld, we're constantly having to choose which steps to take.
Do we stick with the familiar even when it feels restricting?
Or do we take a chance on something new, something unknown, even if it shakes everything up? And that's the question, isn't it?
It is. It really makes you examine your own life, your own choices.
And here's the thing. The story doesn't tell you what's right or wrong. It makes you think about the why. Like, why is Hades so obsessed with order? Why is Satan pushing for chaos?
And when you really look at it, they both have their reasons.
Exactly. It's not black and white anymore. Like Hades, he's not just some power-hungry ruler. He feels responsible, you know? He wants to protect these souls. And then there's Satan. He's not pure evil either. I mean, he wants liberation, a world where nothing's predetermined. You can't say that's not a noble goal.
It's true. It's like the author took these larger-than-life figures, these gods, and made them human, made us connect with them.
And that brings us right back to square one. Where is true freedom? Is it in the unpredictability of chaos, even with all the risks? Or is it in accepting order, even if it means giving up some control?
Maybe. And I know this might sound crazy, but maybe it's not about picking a side. Maybe it's about finding the balance.
I like that.
Right, that sweet spot where you're not totally consumed by order or chaos, but you're navigating both.
Finding your own rhythm in the dance. And that is such a powerful message. This whole idea that it's okay to have both, that the struggle itself is part of what makes us human.
It's in those messy, confusing moments that we figure out who we are and what we want. So as we wrap up this depth dive, I'm going to leave you with this. Think about your own life. What's calling to you right now? Order or chaos? And what does that say about you and the path you're on? Keep those questions in mind, and as always, happy diving.